Well, actually, I would say the more gigawatts you install, the less pragmatism or compromise you need. In general, I think it's even not appropriate to think here about compromises or pragmatism.
Welcome to a new era. Technological advances and a mature and experienced industry are paving the way for a new age of quality in photovoltaics. At the same time, though, the solar industry finds itself a little bit in a pickle due to its own success. Solar expansion is now to happen at a record pace, and that means challenges and bottlenecks are to be efficiently resolved virtually overnight. The focus here now is on reconciling quality and quantity. So what approaches are major project developers taking to solve this Gretchen question? We'll find out in this episode. Welcome to the Smartery podcast, a podcast for and with the creators of the new energy world. A world in which energy will be renewable, decentralized and digital, bringing together electricity, heat and mobility. Let us show you how we will get there and who will get us there. My guest today is Alden Lee, Head of Solar Procurement, Logistics and Quality at ABO Wind, a company that has been planning and constructing wind and solar parks, battery and hydrogen projects worldwide in, for example, Europe, Africa or South America. Apart from that, he's also the Vice Chair of the Lifecycle Quality Workstream of the European Solar Association Solar Power Europe. Welcome, Alden.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very pleased to be here.
Alden, let's start with a topic that basically concerns any industry at the moment, and that, of course, is the war for talent. You addressed it at the Solar Quality Summit in January, and the question, of course, is how can there be a sustainable development of talent in the PV industry as such when companies, are pulling one talent from one company to the next and are really competing for it. So how can the industry come together and solve this problem together?
Yeah, the question is really how we can solve it together. I mean, Solar Power Europe is trying to set up certain requirements so that in the various regions in the European Union, people know what's required and can train accordingly. But this is nothing which helps us now or in the near future, I would say. So there are actually two issues to solve because indeed in the solar industry, it's very hard to find experienced people. What we can do is we can find experienced people outside solar, and certainly it's not enough to look anymore into your country you're based in or something. So we really have a global look for our talents, and this is not only Europe, we also have people from Asia or South America in our teams. And basically, we have to hire, therefore, a year ahead before we need the people. So that's basically the solution we have chosen. So I have, for example, doubled my team last year, but all new members have no solar experience. But now they are really ready and experts to help us this year to perform all the projects so that we can reach our growth goals.
I think there was a very important detail in your answer, and that is that they were not solar experts before. So it's not like you're cannibalizing the market for solar talent in South America for the sake of the European market, but you're training people from other areas.
Correct. So, for example, you would need people who have experience in working with the CAD design software, and then you train them how to design solar farms. You would need people from logistics, of course, also for solar, and here especially like construction logistics. And then, of course, also construction. If people from different kind of construction have experience, they can also join us. And we are actually continuously looking, and it's a challenge. But so far, with being such an international team now, it's really a good way to work in the industry.
So what are your recommendations then when it comes to quality? Because I guess you need to get these people into their jobs as quickly as possible. You need to train them from scratch, as you said. So how can you assure that they're actually being trained with quality when at the same time you need them to be doing their job as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so certainly some people we have to train from scratch. Other people, as I said, I mean, if they have experience in construction, experience in logistics, experience in design, it's certainly faster to adapt them to the solar industry. But here I have to admit, actually building solar farms is not really rocket science. Like if you really think of constructing solar farms, mostly it's repeating the same steps over and over again. But, and that's critical, while maintaining the quality. So actually it's very important to have very qualified supervisors. So you have to train them. You have to train them in advance so that they can really be good supervisors on a site. And here another way even to handle the growth is that you would put these supervisors to larger projects, utilizing them for more megawatts. So what we can see already is that, for example, next year, our average project size will be 50% larger than this year.
Now, of course, quality is one of your main subjects as an expert. But let's be frank, how much quality can we allow for if we really need to target gigawatts and have them in the field as quickly as possible in regards to climate change and also tipping points? So how much quality can we allow ourselves, or how much pragmatism would we need when approaching it?
Well, actually, I would say the more gigawatts you install, the less pragmatism or compromise you need. In general, I think it's even not appropriate to think here about compromises or pragmatism, because exactly because we have now to scale the power plants up, we would rather create now better processes and standards in how to execute this, and thereby becoming more effective in maintaining our quality. And certainly if I have larger solar farms, basically my quality budget is higher. And even when I build more solar farms with, for example, the same suppliers, I don't need to audit them every month. So again, I save here money which I can use somewhere else for quality. And that's what we really have to think of, is that quality is becoming cheaper. And since we are talking about standard processes, it's basically the way to grow the industry is to keep good quality standards.
So basically, it's not about sacrificing quality, but it's investing in really in streamlining, in standardizing, which of course also requires a lot of stakeholders getting on board, communicating with each other, which I think was also one of the key points of the EPC best practice guidelines you helped publish with the Solar Association, Solar Power Europe, and which you also addressed at the Solar Quality Summit. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on it. How do you manage this sort of integrative quality management?
Yeah, indeed. Actually, there are many stakeholders if you see it one by one. So the solution actually ABO Wind is following is that we do as much as possible in-house. That would reduce the complexity of dealing with the several companies. So what does this mean? So for example, we develop our own projects, which means we know the projects we are building. So we know the potential risks and the challenges well ahead. And therefore, when we construct the power plant, we know how to comply with the legal and technical due diligence. So this is something we have solved internally. And since we know around 2 years ahead or 18 months ahead that we will build a certain project, there is actually enough time for us to plan a reliable quality process. So for example, take modules. When we source the modules, mainly from China, certainly, and we audit the factory before signing the contract with the supplier. Only when the factory is good, we would have our modules produced there. And then when the modules are produced for our projects, we would send an institute to check and be there during the production and to see that everything is according to the agreed specs. And afterwards, before they ship it out, we take samples, again by a third party, for example, to Rhineland, and they would check the components. And if a certain quantity fails, then we reject the whole batch and it has to be reworked. So that's the quality standard process we have. But in addition, we are not gambling with our suppliers. We see our suppliers as partners, and we are looking for long-term relationship. So actually, before we list a new supplier, we would do a smaller project with them in order to evaluate their, let's say, real performance and how they react if there's an issue, and do they deliver on time. So that would be part of the selection process. And by doing this, we really have a good control about the supply chain.
Now, we're already talking about supply chains, so let's dive a little bit deeper. You also said that you plan a long time ahead, which of course allows you to maybe also have already long-term contracts. But what's your strategy there? Would you rather go for long-term contracts and, having this whole process and this whole audit scheme, which of course also takes time, done and ready for when you need it? Or would you rather say it's better to have a big diversification of suppliers, which I guess then doesn't allow you to really plan that much ahead?
A certain number of strategic partners is actually required in order to achieve competitive pricing. So certainly we need several partners. Also, it's important that we don't rely only on one supplier, but that the supplier can be substituted by a competitor. For example, in case he's not able to deliver on time, or the expected quality is not sufficient, then we need to substitute it quickly. And also, if we had a claim with a supplier, we would rather hesitate to give him another order until this claim is solved. So that's certainly also part of a quality strategy. So that's why you need certain suppliers, but of course also not too many, because as I said, they are really our partners. And the advantage of fixing suppliers early is really also to secure the components. For example, string inverters, I think 1 year ago, maybe the delivery time was around 3 to 5 weeks. At the moment, it's 12 months. Why is that? Because Huawei had an issue. They were blacklisted by the US, so they couldn't source a key component, so they can't deliver their inverters. And as one of the biggest string inverter manufacturer, suddenly there's a shortage in the market, and everybody who had thought to buy from Huawei is now rushing to the other players. So basically every player is sold out. But we had our contracts already with another player, in this case Sungrow, also a big company. And since we had ordered this volume already months ahead, this crisis didn't affect us, and we can build normally. However, now having said this about long-term ordering, I actually have also to admit that ordering components well ahead consumes much more resources for us, since projects might change. So we might change specs somewhere, and then this has to be discussed with the supplier, although everything was agreed already. Or also projects often get delayed, and suddenly we have to work with storing, and but the payment is due, and so on. So certainly there is a trade-off between these two approaches. But again, if you want to be on the safe side, you rather order early.
Now, of course, if you look at it from a European perspective, and you don't look at the production quality, but you look at the supply chain risk, which we of course all experienced during COVID, and COVID might have just been one of many disruptions we see in the next years to come. Is there a real chance in diversification in the sense of which parts of the world you supply yourself from? Is there an actual chance to build up supplies from Europe to be more resilient?
There is the chance if there are certain regulations by the EU. So basically, you have to make modules from China more expensive somehow, tax them, CO2 tax or whatsoever, in order to make production in Europe competitive. And it's certainly not about modules. I mean, you can make as much module capacity, build as much module capacity as you like, and also as much cell capacity as you like. But at the moment, 97% of the global wafers are from China. So this basically gives China a monopoly. And this means you anyway depend on China as long as you don't have big wafer manufacturing also in Europe. And here, of course, that would increase the price. But for a company like us, everything is fine as long as it's fair competition. So if module price increases for everybody by 50% because we want to favor European supply chains, wafers, cells, and modules, that's fine for us. I think solar is so cheap in producing electricity that it's still competitive. And I even think that once such measures are in place, it will be actually the Chinese companies who will build production in Europe. Many Chinese companies I've talked to, they have analyzed already, they are preparing because they know the talks we have here in Europe, and they are prepared that once Europe makes a real decision, and also the Chinese can see they can make money by producing in Europe, they will do so.
That's a very interesting development. Now, switching from supply chains to more project developments, you mentioned earlier, if I remember correctly, that I think the scale of the projects you focus on has doubled in size usually. But I think you're still also active in small-scale projects, although the market as such mainly is dominated by large-scale PV. So why is that important for a project developer to still have a number of small-scale projects in their portfolio?
Yeah, well, as I pointed out earlier already, we really like to build a smaller project with a new supplier to see how he performs. By this, we would have lower risk exposure. So, and it's also for us easier to supervise such a smaller project. So if there is any problem, we quickly can find solutions for it. But also for us, those small projects are very good to train new employees and also subcontractors we are using. Because certainly there's also a shortage of subcontractors nowadays. So they are hiring new people. And this is something where you really can supervise them, train them, check them out. And when they perform well, only after that you would utilize them for a large scale project.
Seems a very smart way to project, to just pilot either the people you get on board or pilot working with a certain supplier. And that's just the last takeaway we needed, I think. Thanks a lot for joining us today. So what I took away is that we cannot compromise on quality because, as you mentioned earlier, compromising on quality, especially on large-scale projects, can have a lot of negative effects on the long term. So it's rather about investing heavily in training people properly, in supervising them properly, and most importantly, in streamlining really the process as such, in creating standards, which means you need to have a lot of communication between the various stakeholders that are involved. Thanks a lot, Alden.
Yeah, very well summarized. Thank you very much, and always happy to join you.
Learn more at Intersolar Europe, the world's leading exhibition for the solar industry. For more than 30 years, it's been reflecting the rapid growth of the solar industry, and it has been providing a network opportunity for the key solar energy players, all under the motto, Connecting Solar Business. Intersolar Europe will take place from June 14th to 16th, 2023 in Munich as part of Europe's largest platform for the energy industry, the Smarter E Europe.